to escort His Excellency. The Assembly will hear an address by the President of my country, His Excellency Nayib Armando Bukele, President of the Republic of El Salvador. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honour to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Nayib Armando Bukele, President of the Republic of El Salvador, and to invite him to address this Assembly. Madam President of the General Assembly, my compatriot and Ambassador to the United Nations, Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, distinguished members of different delegations, my wife Gabriela and my daughter Ayla, ladies and gentlemen, and principally to the peoples of all of the countries of the world, I bring you the greetings from the land of surf, volcanoes, coffee, peace, Bitcoin and freedom. Almost all of this list is easy to verify. Any visitors to El Salvador will find the best surfing beaches in the world, volcanoes all over the place, incredible coffee. You'll be able to walk easily and peacefully around the whole country. And, in particular, they will find a united people fighting for its freedom. And that is exactly what I have come to talk about from this podium in the United Nations General Assembly. I've come here to talk about freedom. The freedom yearned for by my people and yearned for by all peoples of the world. The thing is, freedom is a country that is so easy to say, but it requires struggle, perseverance, and numerous sacrifices to become a reality. The freedom to choose where we're going and how we want to go there. The freedom to set our course as human beings. But being free, as much that defines it, depends on how we are seen by others, but above all, how we see ourselves. Therefore, in addition to deciding that we want to be free, it's an indispensable requirement for the powerful to respect our freedom. I come from a people that, for a long time, saw itself as less than others. I come from a people where we had never had the courage to take our own decisions. I come from a people where our fate was always controlled by others. I come from a people that is only the master of the smallest country on the American continent. And even this little dominion over this small parcel of land, barely visible on the map, is not respected by countries that have a great deal more territory than us, much more money, much more power, and that think correctly that they are the masters of their country, but they think incorrectly that they are also the masters of ours. And the thing is, a group of powerful countries not only has a great deal more than all the others, but they also believe that they are the masters of the little that is possessed by those countries that are not powerful. It's as if someone were living in a very small and humble house, but they had a very, very rich neighbour with a beautiful, gigantic palace as their house, with huge swathes of land and unimaginable treasures. The person living in the small house respects and admires their neighbour. They don't bother him, even though they might be immensely richer than he is. He is happy in his little house, but he decides to improve it, to paint it, to repair it, and to update the furniture. It takes work, obviously, but he's sure that it'll be worth it. So far, so good. Until the rich neighbour decides that his poor neighbour doesn't have the right to repair his house. He doesn't have the right to buy other furniture or to paint the walls. the rich neighbour decides that he is not only the master of his own palace, but he can also give orders to the poor neighbours in his small house. And the order is that everything has to continue in poor order as it was before. Repairs are not allowed. The poor neighbour has no reason to oppose his rich neighbour. He has no reason to envy him. He doesn't need to aspire to have what the rich neighbour has. He doesn't need to purport to give orders to him in his palace or demand that he update the marble in his sitting room. But the poor neighbour must at least be able to have the right to clean his house, to repair and paint his walls, to update his furniture, plant flowers in his garden, and change the roof for one that doesn't leak and protects him from the rain. This shouldn't bother the rich neighbour. He can't demand that the poor neighbour put back the old furniture, dig up the flowers, peel off the new paint and remove the new roof to replace it with the old neighbour, with the old roof, which furthermore had always leaked. This rich neighbour has no authority to demand that the poor neighbour go back in time. This rich neighbour has no reason to purport to give orders in another house, and this poor neighbour has already tried to follow the orders, and it couldn't have gone worse. Also, because what the poor neighbour is doing is working for the first time. Why should his neighbour force him to return to how things were before? To what end? To achieve what? Shouldn't he be glad that his poor neighbour is just doing a little bit better than before? That's why I say that freedom is something that we're still fighting for in my country, El Salvador. Because while on paper we are free and sovereign and independent, we will not really be so until the powerful understand that we want to be their friends, that we admire them, that we respect them, that our doors are wide open to trade, for them to visit us, to build the best possible relations. But what they can't do is come to our house to give orders. Not only because it's our house, but because it makes no sense to undo what we're doing, what we're achieving. In very little time, El Salvador has moved from being the most dangerous country in the world, literally the most dangerous country in the world. It has moved from that to being on the path to becoming the safest country in America. We have moved from being a country unknown to many, and those few who knew us due to the gangs, the deaths, violence, war. We've moved from that to becoming a country known for our beaches, our surf, our volcanoes, our financial freedom, our good governance, and the fact that we brought an end to organised crime. And these achievements that are only just beginning and that have been achieved in very little time are immense for us. We have the right to continue on the path to our development. That's why I said at the beginning that freedom is something that we're still fighting for, because we still need our right to be free, to be recognised, to truly be independent. I wanted to use this podium to say these words, because they might not only resonate in my country, El Salvador, but also among other peoples of the world that, just like mine, want to chart their own path with freedom. Others might have done this earlier, others might do so later. For some it might be easier, for others it will be more difficult. But it will happen much more quickly if the powerful countries help us, or at least, if they don't want to help us, they shouldn't block our path. Each people should find its own path, and each people will find friends in the pursuit for that path. To these countries, I humbly offer the friendship of this small country, the smallest country in the American continent, the country of surf, of volcanoes and pupusas, the country that's still fighting for its freedom, but which is on the verge of achieving it. 3 years ago, I was here, standing on this same podium at the United Nations. And at that time, I told you that this format was already obsolete. And now, 3 years later, we realise that it is all the more so. But perhaps it still serves to do something. Perhaps it serves, among many other things, to enable this representative of this small country, the smallest in the American continent, to humbly remind you that these United Nations were not created to divide, to destroy, or to subjugate, but rather to allow us to meet each other, to work together, to build a better community of countries, and to seek solutions to global problems. But with absolute respect for sovereignty, independence, and the self-determination of each country. And, as is stated in the United Nations Charter itself, in the first principle of how this organization would act, this organization is based on the principle of sovereign equality of all peoples. And, as is provided in one of the main purposes for which the organization was founded, it was founded to develop friendly relations among nations based on respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples. Perhaps the change from the unipolar world to a multipolar world that is so often talked about would be better if, rather than moving from having one superpower to several superpowers, we moved rather to a world in which each people is truly free to set its own course, and in which this community of nations, we all contribute, the small and the big, with our experiences and our abilities, to resolving the problems facing mankind. Nobody could stand against that. But just as with freedom, it's easy to say so, but difficult to make it a reality. I came here to stand on this podium, in a format in which I no longer believe, to say something which, in all likelihood, in any case, will not change the way in which powerful countries see the others. But it might change the way in which developing countries see ourselves. If, after these few words, I have achieved some of this, or at least that a handful of individuals see themselves with respect and know that they are able to chart their own path, then it was worth it coming here to speak in this obsolete format. And who knows, perhaps over time, perhaps other nations, other peoples will emerge who also decide to fight for their freedom. And then the United Nations will have become relevant once again, at least for this humble servant. Thank you very much. May God bless all nations in the world. On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of El Salvador for the statement just made, and I request protocol to escort His Excellency.